what I first want to do is just talk about the basic functionality of the console to make sure that you know how to do everything that you could do on the other console. But first, I want to draw everybody's attention to the fact that you've got all of these boxes, and if you'll notice on every single box, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see View. Okay. And if you haven't picked up on this already, anytime you select that box, you're basically saying, I want to see more detail of this in my screen. Okay, so you can adjust. Now that doesn't mean that you can't adjust these things without the screen, but it just means, right, like on, for instance, a compressor. I can adjust the basic functionality of the threshold of a compressor, but if you want to adjust the specifics of how that compressor works, you kind of fine-tune it at the screen, if that makes sense. Did you guys use a lot of gating and compression with your Sonos console?
We only use presets.
Okay.
So when I had a vocal preset, it was the whole channel strip preset, which was EQ and dynamics.
Okay. And I just want to make sure, and I don't want to assume that everyone knows what this stuff is. I know that you guys know what a gain is because you know how to set that. Does everybody understand the importance of like a low cut here?
No.
It cuts the
He
low
does
end.
because he does
Yeah.
a lot of editing. We don't.
Not everything in sound, not all sources need to have low end in the channel. So for instance, a female vocal, a cymbal, most vocals, unless you're like one of these bass vocals, really need to go towards the low frequencies in the speaker. When you have a bunch of useless frequencies going on, you're more susceptible to feedback, because feedback can still occur in those frequencies. So that's one more microphone you got to worry about feedback in the low frequency. But if you're not using that frequency, cut it off. Like I know my vocal, I don't need bass frequency. So if you had my microphone, let's just say I was VOX channel 4, I would do a low cut, is what I would do, because again, I don't need those frequencies in my microphone. They're just going to be there and causing trouble. Also, unwanted frequencies cause air in the mix. You've heard a lot of speakers that kind of sound like shh, because there's so many frequencies going to that speaker. It's a noisy console because there's just unneeded things going to separate channels. So it's good to use this low cut for almost everything except for things like
Bass guitar.
Bass, yeah, good. Bass vocals, keyboards, all those things you want to keep the low frequencies in there. And if those frequencies are causing trouble and feedback. A lot of people talk about feedback, but a lot of people don't understand the concept that if you hear a certain pitch and feedback, that's where that feedback occurs. So the feedback can be a high-pitched squeal, or feedback can be a whoop kind of sound, and that's in your lower register. So the frequency that you hear when you hear feedback, it's telling you where that frequency is occurring or where that feedback's occurring. A lot of people don't know that.
Do that apply to singing and speaking?
It does.
Same.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, unless you're a bass vocalist, there's just no sense in sending your vocal to a. I don't know if you guys have a subwoofer.
We don't.
You don't, but you still have low end frequencies. Those are JBL Eons, it looks like. So there's some low end frequencies in there. So, and again, you can get feedback in the low frequencies just like you can in the high frequencies, and a lot of people don't understand that, know that.
So you can adjust that to get it more or less?
Absolutely. Let's go and let's look at this. When I turn this low cut on, let me see if it'll, okay, that just shows you, I kind of want to see it on the EQ spectrum. Okay,
Yeah.
so
So
that's,
you don't go too far. Hundreds don't.
and like I explained, you can see the frequencies from that source going through that EQ, which is really nice.
I think the pulpit microphone picks it up.
So, again, this just tells you how far over.
If you want, I have a wireless microphone here, though.
Oh, okay.
If
Okay.
You need to actually, if you need to, you don't have to.
But that's what
How do you know, excuse me, how do you know how much should we go with?
absolutely.
Just listen.
Yeah, well, you can, but there's also rules of thumb. Like I think 90 is a good place to start, because we know 90 down to 20 is pretty much. First of all, it's almost inaudible, but it's definitely not going to be present in most female vocals. So it's a good place to start. If you've got a female vocal, you can take out more frequencies and you're not going to hurt anything. Because you can see my frequencies jumping up here on the EQ. You can see I've got nothing going on below this frequency here. So I might want to start my curve right there. But when someone says test, 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 you can see their frequencies coming up right here. So that tells you where that threshold can stop at. I also kind of want to chat about setting your gains. Do you guys know how to set gains? How do you set them here? Do you set them so that, I'm going to go over here so I'm not messing up your channels.
It's saved anyways.
Do you save it, or do you set gains so that when I have 5 sources right there, they're all the same volume? Is that how y'all set gains here? Or do you just turn it up and see?
I went to each microphone and each instrument and played it and Ben
And
here
we
just
went to, right before it, the
right
red,
before it clipped.
Okay, right before it clipped. Now, when you did that, did you make sure that, in other words, when you were saying test, 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 right before it got to the red, or were you saying test, test, where somebody might get a little emotional on the microphone?
I actually sang in the microphone.
Did you sing
I sang
very loud?
I sang as loud as I usually
Okay.
sing.
And what I tell churches is set your gains so that you get it right below the red, okay, when someone is singing or speaking their loudest. So when somebody does a sound check, a lot of guys will go up to the microphone and say, check, check. That's not a sound check. A check, I want to hear as loud as you're going to get. I want to hear as loud as you're going to sing so that I know that it never distorts, because that red means distortion. Mm-hmm. Now, just because it's lighting up red does not mean there's distortion, but it's a good reference point to know. So that's one way of setting gain. And I will tell you, the way you're setting gain, most churches don't do it that way. And the reason is, what you're doing is setting gains to warm up your preamp. Because this console, half the reason you bought it, and maybe you don't know this, is because of that word right there. This console has Midas preamps. Those are preamps that you would see in like $1 million consoles. They're really nice. In order to get those preamps, and what preamps means is the signal before it goes into your mixer. It warms up that signal to give it a really good warm tone. Unless you're pulling that gain up really high, you're not really warming up that channel to give it the best sound possible. So the way you guys are doing it is the way to get the best sound possible, believe it or not. But most churches can't understand this concept right here. The way you've done it, when I have one channel here, say a vocal here, and maybe I'm using a guitar on this other channel, the way you've done it, these two, believe it or not, can be the same volume. And most churches can't wrap their mind around that. They want to get it so that if this is here, they're the same volume. So that's the other school of thought. So the way you guys have done it is a little bit different than what a lot of churches do. The way you've done it is what I would call the recording studio method. I don't care what my faders look like. I just want the best sound to come through this console. So I would agree with the way you guys have done it. So that's a good way to do it. But just make sure when you're setting your gains, make sure that you're getting the maximum amount of decibels out of that source. So, and I would encourage you, if you have new singers or new speakers each week, that they come in here and do a sound check before worship begins. I think that's an important thing because, you don't want to just guess at it, when the service starts. So, this right here, do you know what this is? Have you ever heard of something being out of phase?
I know that's phased. I don't know what it does.
If you hear something and it just doesn't quite sound as full as you've been used to hearing it, maybe a wire is, so a lot of people make their own cables and different cable companies wire different ways. Something might sound like it could be out of phase. Press this button and see if that fixes the way it sounds. If it doesn't, then you know it's not a phase issue. But phase issues are very uncommon, but they do exist. And short of going up there and rewiring or rewiring a cable, you don't have time for that. Hit a button. That's what that's for.
Is it kind of like what a DA does when you switch the ground on and off? DI?
It's very, very similar, except instead of electrical, it's a low voltage issue, but it's the same thing. You've got a ground issue. And it could be just that the hot and the negative were flip-flopped on that particular cable manufacturer's cable, or if you're going from XLR to quarter inch, if you're hip to all that, sometimes that kind of stuff goes on. Very uncommon. You don't have to worry about it often, but if you hear something that doesn't quite sound right, that might be what your issues are. So that's this box right here. Does everybody feel comfortable with this particular section? Of course, you can always look at this section a little bit closer and see, and you'll get a decimal meter here where you can actually see it pretty clearly, but you also get that here as well. In this section, we're talking about gating and compression. Does everybody know what a gate is?
Yeah.
Do I need to go over that concept?
Yeah, just a little.
Gating says this: unless that microphone hits a certain decimal level, that channel is off. So in other words, a lot of people set gating so they don't have to mute so much. It's kind of like if your preacher stops preaching, as soon as he stops preaching, that mic cuts off automatically. And why that's important to churches is way different than why that's important to a rock venue, if you will. In churches, it's so important because, and I include myself because I'm an engineer at 2 churches. We have a tendency to be concentrating so much on this, the church service goes by, and guess what? We didn't get to worship. We were so worried about this, we didn't get to worship. And it's terrible because it's a twofold problem. Number one, I didn't worship. Number two, I don't even get to sit with my family. I'm back here. I mean, this is a ministry. And so this console gives you tools to where you can worship again. You can go sit with your family. Therefore, it's less work that you have to do, and you don't have to rip people from their families if you don't want to. Volunteers go up. People aren't as scared as of the console because the console does some of this work for you. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about that. Same thing with compression. Compression says this: if you're going to talk past this level here, I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to let you hurt our speakers. I'm not going to let you hurt our ears. You're not going to get louder than that. Subsequently, if someone goes up there and they talk real soft, it doesn't let them get too soft. I mean, they're right there in this little. You're saying, I want you guys to be in this box, and it's comfortable here. In other words, I don't have to sit here and do this the whole time. That's what compression is. So if you're not getting that out of your compressions, please make sure you're doing that on every channel. Set your compressor so that it's a hands-off thing. Essentially, all you got to do is get that volume where you want it comfortably, and you can kind of let it alone. You don't have to be what I call a fader rider, where you're sitting here doing this the whole time. And guess what? When you're doing this, you're not worshiping. So here are 2 tools where the board will work for you. Use it. I mean, it's there. It's a free feature. Take it. People spend a lot of money on compressors and gates, and you guys get it on every single channel, including the master fader and all the auxes. You have it on every single channel, which is super cool. And like we talked about, you got it on your subgroups too. We found out how to do that. So that's what that box is. If you want to see more details of those things, they've split the gate and the compressor off into 2 separate sections. And you can certainly look at those things. The things that, like the different controls you have over the compressor, you can, like if someone starts to get loud, they call it the attack, how fast it compresses them. And then you got the release, when they quit talking, how fast it releases that compression. In a church, I like to set it so it's a pretty fast compression because it needs to work quickly. It doesn't necessarily sound the best at all times, so you'll see that I recommend different things in a recording studio. But for live, I want it to do that. I want it to work for me that quickly. And then your threshold tells you how much do you want to squash that source. And here it sounds a little cheesy. It sounds real thin. It almost sounds like it's out of phase. So if you can over compress, and the same thing with effects, you can over use effects. So you want to make sure you're not overdoing these things as well. So you want to get it where it's comfortable. So and I'm going to tell you, every source is different. I mean, you don't need to do a lot of compression with keyboards and things because they've already been compressed a lot for you. It's already a source that's already been compressed. Same thing with CDs and tapes and those kind of things. So, but on vocals, I think it's very, very important, especially if you have a dynamic source, like a preacher that gets emotional, is what I keep going back to. I don't know if you guys have that, but I know a lot of the gospel churches I go to, they get up there. So that's what that is. EQ is no different than what you've had. It's just, it looks a lot better. You've got 4 sweepable frequencies. Does everybody know what sweepable means? When I say sweepable, if you're looking here,
So you can check what you're doing wrong.
if you'll notice, this bar here is moving. And on the Behringer console, it's got this nice, beautiful display. You can see it. You can, right where that frequency is that you've selected, you can go up or down, and you can change the pitch. Love it. I just think it's the most beautiful EQ display that I've ever seen on a console under $10,000. This console is just really, really cool about that. So that's your EQ, and you've got that on every single channel, including these channels here. Now, on my master channels, I like to use a 31 band EQ, which you guys have in your console as well, which I'll show you later. They call that an effect instead of, you see, because you can make that an EQ compressor, you can make it a gate, you can make it reverb, delay, whatever effect you want it to be. So it's all assignable. The next box over is called your bus sends. This is kind of like what you used to know as your auxiliary sends. You're going to find that everything on this console they call a bus send. So if you want to take, anytime you're messing with the channel, you have to select it first, and then all of this becomes assigned to what you selected, just like on your PreSonus console. I think it was the same concept on PreSonus, wasn't it?
Yep.
So just like on your PreSonus console, you can select it and turn up that bus send, which is auxiliary 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I think here you guys have the floor. You also have, nothing's different. Monitor left, monitor right, drums, and your translator is 4. But that's what that correlates to. You select it, you turn it up in that monitor. Except this console gives you 2 other ways to do monitor mixing. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. This box here you kind of want to leave alone. This is kind of like on your other PreSonus console where you have to make sure everything's got to be muted or unmuted. The master control of that channel can be muted or unmuted too. So it's going to be stereo bus is going to be on all your channels, and you kind of leave that alone. You can also pan if you've got. Do you have a stereo set up here or mono? Do you know?
It's stereo.
Okay, so you do have the pan control here where you can go right to left if you wish.
It's for the master.
And now this, if I can ask, is this, when this is engaged for a channel, it means it sends to the
Exactly. Yeah,
master?
it's sending it to the masters.
Okay. So if I turn, for example, I have this channel, I turn it off.
It won't work.
Not at all.
Yeah, not at
Not
all.
even in the
Not
how about the
unless,
monitors?
you're sending it to a subgroup and it going to the master. There's the difference. But you're telling it you want it to go straight to that master. Now, if you yes, you can still send it to the monitors, because all you're saying is this channel is not going to the master. That's what it's saying. That's all you're saying. So that would be good for things like applause microphones or audience microphones. You don't want that to go to the main, because everybody can hear everybody in here, but maybe on your recording, you want it just to go to the recording channel. So people at home, maybe you record a CD or something, people at home can hear people singing and clapping, but you don't want that to go to the main mix. That would be a good example.
Okay. But when I turn it off, I can still hear it in the monitor.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yep. And because your monitor controls here.
Yeah.
So
It's exactly how we used to have it at the PreSonus. They used to be group 1 through 4, and then main. That's like the main assign.
Yep. So any questions on the basic functionality of the channel as it now exists? I know it's a little bit different from the PreSonus. I want to stop and answer any questions you may have.
I'm still a little bit, with the gate and how you find the right setting.
It's a great question. I could give you a very educated answer. I could tell you it's best to use your ears. And I think you mentioned that earlier. What I would like for you guys to do when it comes to gating and compression, and keep in mind, this isn't a perfect science. This is not something, the concept of gating isn't a perfect concept. For instance, let's say I want to gate that microphone there, the pulpit microphone. Typically where you set a gate is if, let's just say the preacher gets above a whisper. So as he's getting down here and he's getting to a whisper, the mic cuts off. Okay, you set that point. You could set it to where he's got to yell to get that microphone to turn on. So it's not a perfect science. Let's say you set it to a whisper and he quit and he gets off the microphone cuts off. Well, then we got a song going on. And if you don't think that drum set's going to set that microphone off, so there, again, it's not a perfect science. Plus, some preachers get a little emotional, and some preachers like to drive a point home with a whisper. They'll do that, and then if their mic cuts off, then that's kind of awkward. So you got to be careful what you use these tools for, and you got to use some logic here, because common sense is going to bring you a long way. Drummers love gates, because there's one decimal level that's gonna pop that tom, and until it hits that certain level, you want it gone. So you can get that microphone to be accept lots of decibels of volume without turning on until you actually hit that tom, and that'll help you with a lot of
So
feedback.
the cymbals is not gonna turn it on.
It's exactly right. It's got to be that hard pound on that drum. So it's perfect for drums, and drums is where you get a lot of feedback, or a lot of feedback. So it's a great tool to use on drums. It's good to use on a lot of microphones, but some microphones, like the pulpit example I mentioned to you, might not be the best place to use a gate. So you just have to use your common sense there. Now the compression is no different. Again, if you use too much compression, your sources, you're going to see it's going to sound real thin, because you're putting things in a box that it can't get out of. And the vocal doesn't need to be confined. It needs to be a little dynamic, so you can have inflections in your voice and things like that. The problem occurs when someone yells or someone talks too softly that you can't hear. It becomes inaudible, and you're just trying to help it out a little bit. You're trying to just squeeze that in a little bit so it's a comfortable volume. You want people to be able to get a little bit louder. I mean, that's the whole point of speakers being dynamic and people paying attention in church. A lot of, if someone has a very monotone voice, it's going to get boring. People are going to fall asleep. You want them to be able to get a little bit louder, so you don't want to squash them. But you might start off right about here. You might start off right about there, see what that sounds like. Say, give me a sound check, and say, check, check, and see if it kind of stops them from getting a little bit loud. And if it is, it just cuts that edge off, so it doesn't become ear piercing. That's probably a good place to start. And the cool thing about this console, it's all saved. So every week we should be progressing, right? It should be sounding better and better and better. And as you notice things they're having issues, fix them, and at the end of the service, save. So each week, essentially what we're saying is this thing's going to get better and better and better. So it's something that you work towards. Mm-hmm. You're not going to just turn it on Sunday and it be perfect. This is going to get better as you go as well. Did I answer the main question you might have had on it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. If I didn't, please let me know, because I didn't understand any of this stuff until I got into it.
Confined, it's like a space where the voice would be. Now, okay, I see how you can set the threshold, which means the top part, right? But how do you set?
Yeah, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that. I use this example just to kind of give people a good visual, but you're absolutely right. Threshold only does this, okay? So typically you're squashing people from the top down. Okay. But what happens is when you squash people, you typically have to turn them up. And so when I think about the bottom, I think about it going up as well. Gotcha. So it just kind of handles the bottom part of it naturally. But that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that question. That means,
I'm trying to get it.
No, that just means you've got a good sense of audio. You've got the concept, so that's good. But I just don't ever have to explain that typically, so that's great.
He does a lot of logic editing and stuff like that. He knows a lot of stuff that we don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do a lot. I have a small recording studio at home, so yeah.
Oh, cool. Do you open up to the public, or?
No.
Well, for the sake of the video, we'll move on. Sorry. People at home don't need to hear about it. I'm sorry.
Not yet.
So, let's talk about the individual channels. You've got 1 through 16. You've got 17 through 32. And then your last 8 channels are going to be right here, which are your auxiliaries. These are going to be your quarter-inch inputs. So are you using these?
We actually have the computer sound hooked up to this.
Okay, so your computer is
not to this. I think these two. It's the RCA in the back. And we were kind of wondering for a while, where's the sound coming from? How do we control that sound? And we finally found it on this too. Actually, yeah, I think this too.
So you must have it plugged in back here at 5 and 6. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, this board, at any time you need to leave, please do so. I know you got to leave early. But a lot of people want to say this is only a 32 channel console, and as you guys now know, it's not. It's a 40 channel console because you got 1 through 16, 17 through 32, and then you have your last 8 here as well. I think it's important to note here that this console will only record 32 channels at a time. It will not do all 40. So just so you guys know, we will not record these in separate channel mode. You guys are most likely going to do a USB 2 channel mix down. Is that correct? Or are you going to be
separate channels? Yeah.
Do you guys do separate channels?
We used to do with capture on.
Really?
Yeah.
This is the first church I've ever been to that does that. Because that's a lot of commitment. I mean, it's just for somebody to
It's
post
a lot of
this-
work afterwards.
Well, you
Oh, it's a ton of work. I mean, that's amazing that you guys do that.
I take all the work at home.
Well, you might do some research on this because, again, I don't know how that works with the group. You're the first church I've ever encountered that's done this.
I know.
So
in
I'll
the-
help you with this.
Sorry, in
Go
the
ahead.
board built in, I know it records the main out.
Mhm.
You know, but you need another separate software, Logic, Total,
Yeah.
to record separately.
You do. So if you guys are doing that, I will work with you to help you find that answer. Because this is the first church that I've ever seen that does multi-tracking. That's cool. It gives you a lot more control on the back end, but it takes a big commitment level from your volunteers.
Because
So
you
that's
know why?
great.
Because we don't amplify the drums, right? We just record them. So that's why I like to have drums separately. I have to have vocals separately. I have to have instruments separately.
Sure.
So it's easier to edit.
What's this USB left and right? Is it when we connect something here and we play music off it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
So, for instance, if I have music files on a USB drive, I can actually play it from there.
Yes, you can.
So
Yeah.
you can see what's on the USB here.
You can.
Yeah.
You've got a whole display, bottom right. Super cool. You know,
Now-
you can fast forward, and then you've got another tab here where you can configure it and tell it where to go
Yeah.
to the main
So
mix.
let's plug this here. Remember how we did it with the Fire? See, it's already showing all my folders and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, you would just go down to.
I don't know if I have any
Yeah, you
music
go
in
there
there
and then
now.
you would hit play.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
So we don't need to mess with CDs anymore if somebody comes.
Yeah.
You're gonna need to mess with CDs as long as there's people, because I'm still messing with tapes at my
That's
church.
it.
People are just so
That's
stuck on it.
why we wanted to figure out how to connect the computer and
Yeah.
where we can see that, where we can play the.
You remember when you're gonna get to the groups and stuff, we couldn't figure out. Now we would like our DCAs to be this groups, but one of the groups I would like it to be this.
Cool. Yeah.
Can we? I mean, can we do that?
It's
Is
just
it
as easy.
possible?
It's just as easy as what you just did.
Okay, because that was the thing that we couldn't figure out how to.
Yeah.
But maybe later.
Yeah. So this would be a good point to open up for questions. You know, again, make sure you're selecting the channel that you want to alter, volume control, and you can mute as well. Okay. So if I told someone to turn up channel 16, y'all know that you have to go 1 through 16 and turn it up or down, right? Does that make sense?
Now, what's the latency between is it live?
It's live.
Yeah.
Yeah. No latency on that at all.
Yeah, real time.
Super cool. And of course, you can do all that functionality on the main.
Let's
stuff
say
on the iPad.
you have a iPad connected. Can you control let's say you control the 16 here and then you control the other on that?
That's correct.
Can you do that?
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
And it's multi-touch too. You can touch it and
Yeah.
Actually, when I watched a video online about a guy at a church, he said he mixed ones only from 2 iPads. So he had like 16 channels side by side, and he mixed it up there. He didn't mess with the board.
You can have one for 1 through 16, one for 17 to 32, one dedicated to just the monitor mix. I mean, you used to have one console here, one console up there for larger venues, but now you just give the monitor mix console guy an iPad. He can just do it on an iPad. You don't have to have a console up there. It's just completely changing. Now, the technology's been here for a while, but it's never been affordable until now. I want to make sure I make that clear. I mean, this is, so you're seeing a lot more of it going on because, again, there's never been this many features in a console for less than about $10,000 until this came out. So it's just, this thing is, breaking records because of that. So it's a really cool thing. I want to talk about monitor mixes, because I think that's important. And it's one of my favorite things about this board, and which makes it, in my opinion, better than the Personas. You can do this method here and then turn it up in your monitor mix, monitor 1, 2, 3, or 4. You can do it that way. But you're going to find you're going to use that less and less now that you have this console. The way to do it, let me first make sure I explain to you guys how to access your monitor mixes. Bus 1 through 8. This is your master volume for bus 1 through 4. Okay. Bus 19 through 16, you're not using these either, but you will be using them for the effects, because you treat effects just like you treat a monitor mix. And so, with that being said, really quickly, let me show you. If I want to turn reverb up on this channel here, I'm going to flip, because I see here that effects are 13 through 16. I'm going to flip to 13 through 16, and now this becomes 13. So I'm turning up reverb on that channel, or whatever you have assigned to 13. Okay? You don't have to have effects. They can be anything, really. So it works just like a monitor mix. But, so get back to the monitor mixing. This is super cool, and you're going to find this is a very important button here that's called Sends on Fader. This is a button you typically see on really expensive consoles. You select the monitor mix. You hit Sends on Fader, and now these become the volume controls for the monitor mix.
That's cool.
Super cool. And now the new upgrade, the new firmware, it makes it flash at you. Because what they found is when this was just a stagnant red light, people forgot it was on. So they would still treat this like so this is telling you, hey, you're still on monitor mix, get out of there. So you got to hit it again, and it goes back to your normal fader mode. So that's a super cool thing that this console does. It works exactly the opposite way too. So let's say the music player. All 4 monitor mixes, everybody's saying, we can't hear the music player up here. You select it, you go the opposite way, Sends on Fader, and now this becomes the master fader for that particular channel in all 4 monitors at the same time, which is the equivalent of what you used to have to do when you selected this, turn this up, turn this up, turn this up, turn this up.
Okay.
Now it just becomes boom, boom, boom. You're quicker, you're faster. You can do the same thing a lot faster. But this feature here where you select the monitor mix, hit Sends on Fader, has been the most popular feature on the console. Because now you can visually see where everything is in that monitor mix.
And you can go from monitor to monitor without switching it on,
Yep,
on and off.
sure can. You can go to monitor 2, monitor 3, monitor 4. So, very, very neat.
Question.
Sure.
If I'm using the iPad, for example, to do my own mix in that monitor in front of me, when I'm trying that, I assume on the it has a demo version. I assume I still have to press Send on Faders on the iPad.
Ooh, great question.
That means the whole board will change in front of him all of a sudden.
Yeah, when you move that, he'll see these faders moving up and down.
Okay.
And you do not have to hit Send on Fader. I don't think Send on Fader
That'd be good not to have to do
this,
Send on Faders.
on this one you say bus 1 through. You don't have to hit, and you got the faders, and they're automatically.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, when I do this, you'll see it move up and down. It'll be it's the same thing as
I
if
don't want that to happen to him, like all of a sudden everything's
it's kind of like this. What was I doing? Oh, here it is. You'll see that kind of thing going. It's kind of fun. But so
Well, actually, when we tried to work with the monitors, we did this, not there.
Yeah, I did when we did it. I didn't know about this. After that, like the day after, I watched some videos online. I realized, oh man, we could do it by that. Yeah,
I love that shirt. That's a cool shirt.
I got it. I had to be appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have dressed up had I known. Next most important popular feature. Now, guys, I will say really quickly.
You need a chair. I have a chair right here.
You're fine, doesn't matter. You good? Just like each channel has a all this control, again, I can select that monitor mix and I've got the exact same controls. So I think it's important to note that, because you certainly can add EQ compression to that monitor send. So questions so far? We've gotten through the bulk of it and the basic functionality. Everything we're going to be talking about from here moving forward is going to be kind of advanced things that you might want to know about, and kind of answer questions from there. And please stop me at any time. There's no dumb questions.
That's what I need the most.
Yeah. Just in case you weren't here for when we were setting up this console, to change any of these things, you hit select. This is for the people at home, utility, and then you get right to that screen where you can change all the colors, all the pictures, and you can select your verbiage, whether it's a preset verbiage or you want to write your own. If you're not using that channel, I always encourage you to black them out. So I'm going to do the same thing really quickly with the buses, because I think that's important. I'm going to go here, I'm going to black these out because we're not using these. And good. So I think I want to talk about the effects next. I think that's important. Do you guys use a lot of effects?
We usually just have a little bit of reverb of voices, and that's it. Because I'm using a pedal for the guitar, so it has effects in it.
Typically, most people use reverb. Sometimes you might get a delay. I don't know if you guys do.
I was thinking, since this have it, why not using a little bit of a delay from now on?
But I want you to see, you hit effects, you've got 8 effects processors built in, and they all look like rack units. So, they're just beautiful. This is just really good stuff. And then there's those EQs I was talking about. Effects 1, they start you off with a vintage reverb. It's just a classic reverb. It sounds good. You can make this sound however you want to sound. You can use presets, like you had mentioned, but the way you choose those different, let me see here. There's your different reverbs, delays, chorus, flangers, phasers, mixed delays and flanger mixed together. Then you got your EQs. So there's just more stuff in here than you'll probably ever use, but they're there. Enhancers, exciters, a lot of those are studio tricks.
And what I like a lot about it is with every firmware upgrade or update comes with more and more effects.
They are. So, yeah, my 2 favorite firmware updates is that blinking and the EQ, where it shows you the frequencies behind the frequency spectrum. Your first 4 effects are programmed to 13, 14, 15, and 16. Every church I've ever worked with, they've always left that the way it is, and I think it's fine. So, again, we've got to give them a master volume, just like you do on your monitors, okay? So I set them up at Unity, just to start off with. If I want to add reverb, again, I'm going to treat it just like a monitor mix. I'm going to select the first reverb, okay, which we know is a vintage reverb, send zone fader, and I'm going to come over here and add that reverb to that channel, just like I would a monitor mix. It's no different, no difference at all. I can do it up here. I can select the channel. I can go 13 through 16 and turn up that reverb.
So basically like a send like you would have in Pro Tools, just turn it.
That's exactly right. It is just no different at all. So it's super easy and convenient, simple to use. So don't make it complicated. You asked about this. This is a good point to bring up this.
These are like shortcuts, right?
These are just shortcuts. You'll see this thing blinking here. We'll see what effects. This is effect 3, because remember it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Effect 3 is a delay, so that's telling you the tap tempo, and you can delay. You can change it to delay. It's a tap tempo, but depending on the effect you have on here, depends on what this button does. That's why it's not labeled correctly. So you'll find that some effects don't even have buttons working, because that particular effect doesn't need to have any type of module.
Those doesn't necessarily have to be effects.
Exactly.
So, for example, if
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. Do these have to be effects in general? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Can this be like a shortcut for something else, like an
Yes.
auxiliary or something?
Mhm.
I have no idea. Great question. I've only used it for effects. I've never looked into that. You guys are throwing some new ones at me, so that's cool.
It's Lucas.
Oh, Lucas is here?
Yeah.
But that's a great question.
Okay.
I can
I
help you.
think based on what I saw online,
Mhm.
it tells me that those are shortcuts to almost anything.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. So it comes from the factory being
yes,
notified.
with some defaults.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You guys used mute groups in the past?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go over mute groups really quickly.
When I mean mute groups, I mean we used to mute a group when, for example, I
Oh, you
have
would hit
all the
mute there,
voices.
or-
Yeah, all the
okay.
voices grouped to one thing, and when we don't sync, he would mute the voices.
And I'll show you something that we've done. We've our group channels are up here. They're called DCAs, and they call them Group DCA 1 through 8. And these are just as easy to assign. See, on your old console or analog consoles, you'd have to go to each channel and assign it to Group 1. You'd have to go on each channel and select it. But on this console, you hold down the group channel, and you just hit the buttons of what you want to assign. So if I wanted to get that out of that group, I would just click it. Or if I wanted to assign all these to be on the group channel, now those would be on that group channel, or I could take them off. So what you've got is a vocal group assigned, instruments, and drums. And you had mentioned you wanted to put maybe the CD player on one, so you just go down to auxiliary, you hold down 4, and then
4 is already assigned to the translation.
okay. So well, that's the monitor mix, right?
Yeah, you're right.
This is just the DCA, so you want that to be 5 and 6, so you just select 5 and 6. So now that's we'll go ahead and label that one. What do you want to call that? It's your CD
Computer.
player?
It's always gonna play for this laptop. over
Okay,
here,
so
so name it computer.
Okay.
So that acts like, remember that 2-track little volume.
And what that does, it stops you from having to select channels 33 through 40, right?
Yeah.
Because now, since I've got this control, I don't have to, if I'm up here, I don't have to select this and then turn up, now I can be on this screen and I know this is my computer, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of a cool feature. So these are your group channels. Now, please make sure that everyone's clear on this. If this is down, if instruments are down and you're turning these instruments up, you're not going to hear them because it's the volume now. So
That's how we want it.
a lot of churches where there are sound engineers that don't communicate properly, I'm not saying that that's you guys, there's friction here because they don't know that that's going on and they're turning things up and it's just, why is it not working? And they forget about DCAs. So make sure that that's,
It's happened a few times.
Yeah.
but it's a very cool tool. It's an easy tool to use. And just like you can group channels together to send to the master, you can group channels together for a mute group. So, so you could simply mute the vocals like you've been doing, or here's an alternative way to do it. You hold down mute group. I click the mute group page. I hold down mute group, and I just assign things I want to mute. So that when I come out of there, if I hit mute group 1, it mutes those.
It's still on. The mute,
What's that?
the mute thing, it's still on.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you hold that down, it mutes it for you.
That's cool.
So
So what would be, but kind of you could do the same thing by muting a group, right?
it's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, so
What I think we
If you
could
want to
do-
mute just the specifics, not the whole
See,
group.
we have
or
two
mix.
condensers going in house right now, which one we use as a vocal, one is a pulpit. So many times when there's music, those microphones picks up a lot of stuff that we don't want. So maybe when there's only music, we can assign a mute group to mute
because,
just the vox and the
Yeah, because
pulpit.
that's what we do, yeah. With those two, when it's music or something else, we mute them.
Oh,
That's where we
cool.
get the most feedback. 'Cause it's
Yeah, if there's feedback in the
Condensers.
house, 90% of the time it's coming from one of those.
Yeah. And like I said, once we get down the line, we can talk about I think it'll make you guys, it'll make a big difference to get those things aimed towards straight. There's just no need for
Yeah,
it.
We can do that.
I think we can do
If
that.
you can just do that, it'll solve a lot. You'll get a couple more decimals, I promise. And then, again, I would move them a little bit closer, angle them down a little bit more at some point. That's something that you can kind of do as a group, and you'll have a couple holes in the ceiling. You'll need to patch those holes. You'll need to run that again. But it's
Few
not.
people in our church are actually house builders.
Yeah,
They can
it
help
is
us with
not. It's not as hard as it looks. If you
Yeah.
have a good lift in here, good scaffolding, it's actually pretty simple. But that right
we,
there
we
would.
don't sing on the stage. We always sing right there in that corner.
Okay,
Exactly how it's
so that's
set up.
not too
So,
bad.
yeah.
But the problem is you're getting this feedback from this condenser, and I think that's your main issue is the positioning, plus the fact that you don't have any acoustical treatment in here. I think those two things are stopping you from really getting the volume you need out of that microphone comfortably without having to worry about it. That's the other thing. You might be okay. You're having to do little, you're having to mess with your EQ to get the feedback to go away so you can turn it up. But then, what happens when you mess with EQ is you're sacrificing tone, So this is the last option. The first thing you ought to do is change positioning, then go to here when all else fails. So that's why I try to say, that's why I'm making those recommendations, because EQ should be the worst case scenario. You've heard of these feedback busters, feedback ferrets. It's just an EQ trick. And the reason I don't like them is because they take the power out of my hands.
Outboard console.
Yeah.
Outboard racks.
I think they even have a feedback eliminator as one of the effects. And to me, it's just, if you don't know what you're doing, it's a cool trick, but I don't want something it's going to,
We
yeah.
had a winner first.
We had one, yeah.
Yeah, it's just an EQ trick, but I don't want it to select frequencies to take away. I might want those frequencies because that might be where my tone's at. And the problem could have been the whole time my speakers were just in the wrong place. So I just share that with you as a thought down the road. Talkback is a cool feature. Instead of saying, "Hey, does everything sound okay up there?" You hold down talk, and here's your microphone. "Hey, does everything sound okay up there?"
So who's using that?
Yeah, let's look into this right now. I'm going to click View, and right now we have not selected it. So I'm going to select all my monitor sends. So I want to talk to everybody on the stage. Now you could essentially assign it to the main output, but we're not going to do that because the only time I typically see that happening is if someone's back here making announcements or there's a play and where there's someone narrating a play, and they can sit back here at the console and talk. It's pretty cool. So you have
Practically your 41 input.
yeah. So all I'm going to do is hit talk, and now I've engaged the microphone in these mixed buses, and I'm going to turn this up. I'm not hearing anything, which tells me that my buses are down. They're down here.
Buses are down and
So I'm going to put them on Unity really quickly. I don't know if that's too much or what, but I'm going to
they
give.
were lower. They were much lower.
Okay, let me come on down.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, check. Does everything sound okay? Yeah. So that way I don't have to yell. They're hearing what I'm saying. How does everything sound up there?
Curious how low they are, maybe.
Sure.
You can hear from here.
Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me? Does everything sound okay over there? So super cool, and it's discreet, and you don't have to yell up at the front of the stage.
This is actually very helpful for you because since you're using headphones, he can talk to you as loud as he wants.
While we're talking about headphones, please note that you've got 2 headphones on each side, so whichever you're closer to is for convenience. Do you guys use headphones a lot?
Well, we use them not a lot. I like to, when it's a lot of people, I like to listen to. But when I do the mix, I like to hear live.
Mostly for solo.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're hip to the solo concept, that's what they're for. That's the main reason people use them. But again, conveniently on both sides, you got your solo button on each channel, including your master. If you want to hear your master, if you want to hear your monitor.
I saw there's different kind of solos here that we didn't have on the Personas. Where's the solo?
Like right here.
Yeah, what's clear solo? That we didn't have on the Personas.
You see what I just did there?
Okay.
Kills them all at one time with one button
Okay.
versus me having to go. Preset.
Yeah, we thought it's something else.
Oh, we were completely wrong.
Because on the PreSonus, the solo doesn't give you just that
Yeah,
channel.
it does not mute everything else and keep only
That's,
that while you
you know.
selected. There was something. How was it called? That I forgot. But there was like a solo volume that you have to put it all the way up in order to hear much louder than the rest of it.
Yeah, that was something I didn't like about that.
Well,
Actually, we didn't even try if this one does it right.
here's your volume control on your headphones, just like you have volume control on your Talkback mic. Now on your Talkback, you'll notice you've got A and B. A, you have to keep it suppressed here, and then you can let go. This one, it stays on, just like that. So those are the two Talkback functions that you have. If you want, and you can select this one to be monitors, you can select this one to be mains or whatever. Or say I want to talk to just the preacher, or this I talk to everybody on the side of the stage. However you want to set it. The way I like to think about it is this is the one I can just set and forget. This one I've got to hold. It's just a quick thing I want to say quickly. But up here you got Talkback A, Talkback B. You go to that tab with your
When
arrow.
you want to talk, when you're talking about how bad somebody sings, make sure it's not engaged the whole time.
So, very sensitive subject in churches. I always love talking to churches to see how they deal with people who aren't making a joyful noise.
We do that after, you know.
But, and something to think about while we're talking about our responsibilities in here, if you're not doing this, I encourage you to do that. Make sure that because if something goes wrong, people are going to turn around and look at you. You're responsible whether it's your fault or not. And I feel for you because I'm there with you. I've been doing it for a very long time. That's why it's super important to have sound checks. Just because someone knows how to sing does not mean they know how to hold a microphone. Just because someone's a preacher does not mean they know how to hook up a wireless or hold a wireless microphone. You get some people that'll hold a microphone down here like this, and you'll have people that'll do like this into the monitor when they're not using it. I've seen it all. So, just so you guys know, it is your responsibility to do that and to train them to make sure they understand how microphones work. I go to one church where the preacher has to get right up on that microphone that's on the podium, and I've told him time and time again that's not what that microphone is. It's not. So he's just bluntly not listening to me. But you got to at least do your due diligence to make sure you're telling people how to hold microphones and things like that. Because if someone's holding it down here, you got to turn them up, and then you're going to get feedback before you get good volume and things like that. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're doing sound checks. That's super important.
So if you would have a lot of gate on that microphone, whenever he's doing that, he's not going to be heard.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's just muddy. It's muddy. It works fine. It's just muddy sounding. I mean, it's just, and nobody's hearing this message. I think it's terrible. But here's something a little bit more complicated with the firmware update that I don't like, but it gives you more functionality. Is how you save scenes, and I know you know how to do it because you've done it, and you've already got it saved. But this box right here, this is how you save a scene. You click it. What you've got is, they call these shows, and within every single show you've got different scenes, and it looks like you've done some testing here.
This only the last 2 hours. Everything else was there already. I don't know why.
It's a new firmware update. Then they're just trying to
Presets and stuff.
Yeah, looks like they're presets from the factory. And maybe they're giving you examples of different things, but you've got 100 scenes, and when I say scene, it's a snapshot of every single function on the console. Keep in mind, on the PreSonus, that wasn't the case. PreSonus saved everything on the console except the gains.
Yep.
The gains,
We had problems with
the
that.
gains were analog. So why they didn't make that a digital function, I will never know, but they didn't. But this console, everything's
Probably
digital.
the same way why they didn't motorize the feeders.
We had such a big issue with that. We had this youth conference like a month ago, and we had like at least 3 bands and some other people singing every night. And we
One
made
after another.
we made a sound check. We saved the scenes, but the gains were not the same.
Yeah.
We had to mess with the gains
Oh, yeah.
during the singing.
And that messes your monitor mixes and your main.
and the recording. Remember, we have like a 1 track for that specific microphone for the whole night for 3 bands, and sound gain was like this, sound gain was like this, and all that, and then do that, and the editing was.
I've seen so many churches that have the Presonus console and they have a big piece of tape over that whole row. And I understand and I get it. So it takes a picture. It's called a scene. There are 100 scenes in one show, is what they call it. And you've got, you know, as many shows as you want to. I think there's like 100.
How do you assign a scene to a show?
Well, you're on the first show, okay? And you can label this. We'll see here. So select. Let me see here.
I was trying, we couldn't figure it out. We only saved
It
the scene.
might. Okay, my show is the name of this guy. And see, it's so different because this is different from the old one. And maybe. See, I haven't tested this. I know that you can add shows with a USB drive. So it might be that my show is simply talking about this console's internal show, and you can do 100. I saw they added this screen, but I think this screen is for maybe because I'm seeing that I don't really have a lot of control. I bet you this screen right here is for when you put a USB drive in here and you assign shows to a USB drive. I bet you. I don't know.
Are you able to take out scenes and back them up if you
You sure can, and most people do. Most people, you can save the
When you
scene.
select the scene, I think you have the option to actually save to USB or something.
That's
like
exactly right. And most churches do that, and most churches save that scene that they're comfortable with and put it in a secure place. A lot of preachers I know do that. They'll take it and they'll put it in their desk drawer. So if something were to go wrong, you know, but this is where you save your scenes. You click save, and I'm not going to go through with it, but you label your scene. You hit save. It says, "Are you okay?" Hit the right arrow, and you'll hit the right arrow, just like that. To recall a scene, you'll go to it, and you'll hit load, and it'll say, "Are you sure you want to recall this scene?" You hit yes. Same thing, and you'll bring that scene back up. Where that's important, and again, I don't want to be too repetitive on features you already use, is if you have guest speakers or guest musicians and you don't want them to mess up your settings, assign them do a sound check, assign that to a different scene, and then go back to yours whenever they're gone. It goes back to the way it was. Yeah.
Just a quick question. When you load a scene, do you have to, what else do you have to do? Because on the other one, on Personas, you have to locate and then...
No, you don't locate.
The locate was
was
because we
because
didn't
the
have
feeders.
motorized
So this
radios.
one does everything.
Yes. As soon as you load it, it's good to go.
There's nothing
No
else.
more fixing volumes.
You have the option to do a lamp here, but it's very, very dim, as most console lights are. If you're gonna put a light back here, I'd recommend you do something like this, where it's. You're getting to about the. Go ahead.
I have to leave
Yeah,
because-
you're getting. I mean, I was getting ready to say I'm getting to about the end of the training. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you very
It
much
means a lot.
for enlightening us on
Hey,
because
I'll tell you this: if we don't know, we'll get through it together. We'll figure it out together.
yeah, well, we might run into some things that we might need some help, and maybe we.
I have your phone number.
Well, yeah, keep me on speed dial. That was the deal, and you guys decided to do business with us, and that was my promise. And you'll find that most of the time, especially you guys are very, very smart. The questions you have, I'm gonna have that question too. So, but what I promise you, I'll help you do it together. So, have a good night. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So, anything that you just get stuck on, call me, and we'll just jump in there. I have the rep's number on speed dial, and he gets me through a lot of stuff. And again, YouTube is a very helpful. Any other questions, thoughts that you have that you want to run by me?
I was thinking not to have to go through different layers as too much. So since we're using these groups, and I have this, can I group the FXs? Can I have a group that would control the FX up and down, like a general volume for the FX without
A master volume.
going here or here?
What you want to do is go to Bus Master, which gives you all 16 master faders. Select DCA.
And assign them.
or you can do each one separately. This one, do 2, 3, 4, either way. But the only way to assign, this was the question you asked me the other day, the only way to assign DCA volumes is to go to this screen only. In other words, you can't hold this and then go to here and then, see, I'm already pressing that button.
Yes.
So it doesn't work. So you have to go to bus master. Hold down that button, and then you can select this.
So you can make a group out of a box, out of a bus. They call it bus now.